Welcome to Stepping Stones, L&D Career Journeys Explained, the podcast that shares the how of fellow L&Ders. I'm your host, Christina Rogers, and today I have Mariana Horsberger as my guest. Mariana is a trilingual translator with a passion for L&D, VR, and languages. She is currently Business Development Manager at Terra Translations, helping businesses and higher ed institutions translate their training and educational programs into multiple languages. She is also co-running GLDC operations with her favorite GLDCer and partner in crime, Linnea Surgeon. I'm going to butcher that, Linnea. Someday when you're on here with me, I apologize. And that's actually how I came to meet Mariana. Additionally, she is the co-organizer of Welcome Into the Awesome with John and Liz. She also writes articles for the American Translators Association. She is a tireless traveler. She's originally from Argentina and has also lived and worked in Brazil, including having the fun of working the Olympics in Rio in 2016, which is really cool. She comes to us today, funny enough, from her home in Southern Oregon. So welcome, Mariana. So good to have you.
That's right. Hi, Christina. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.
I'm so excited to be
yes,
here.
We are going to have some fun today. So aside from clearly making way in the world of L&D, I invited Mariana to share her story because it's a global one that involves different countries and languages. For those of you who are multilingual, trying to make way in the L&D world, or who are navigating waters to grow your L&D career, may this episode inspire you and encourage you to take on adventurous avenues that are a little different, but still very much part of L&D. So with that said, Mariana, share with us, though you live in Southern Oregon, what was your journey that led you from Argentina to Brazil and then to the United States?
Oh my goodness. I don't know where to start. Well, I guess my first encounter with L&D, and I think back then I didn't even know like that there, there's this I feel that there's this disconnect in Latin America, especially in Argentina, with the L&D world, with certain, keywords and concepts that we talk about all the time, especially at the GLDC that you mentioned before. That I feel like all that knowledge has not made its way there yet. And
interesting.
I think my first encounter with L&D was when I was still studying translation in college. I got a job. I basically had the freedom to do whatever I wanted.
Nice.
I created a workshop for kind of like a remedial after class workshop for kids in high school that were struggling with English in their, in the English subject in high school. Right. So I basically started creating my own classes and creating my own content. And, looking back now I go like, yeah, I didn't even know about instructional design back there. And of course my skills were not great to put it mildly, but it was, it was kind of like my first encounter with L&D, and I super enjoyed being able to see my students' progress and being able to help these kids that couldn't, traditional classrooms were not providing what they needed in order to learn, in order to succeed. And and of course I had to try different techniques. I tried scenarios, different types of activities. I tried to tap into their own interests to make it more exciting for them, to engage them further. And that actually led me to teach in Brazil after I graduated college. And I kind of had like a very winding path to L&D. I also, after graduated, while I was in Brazil teaching English, I was also translating for two great colleagues of mine from Argentina that are actually really famous in the industry. One of them is Gabriel Dorem. He is part of the Argentine Association of Translators and Interpreters.
Nice.
And Aisha Slatar, she's also pretty well known in our community, in the translation community in Argentina. And I got the pleasure of working with them with more creative translation projects. So
wow.
One of them, for instance, was translating, but also creating activities for a school district in the US in Spanish. So it was basically a bilingual educational content for school. I can't remember which state. I think it was a school district in California, but I don't remember because this was decades ago. But I remember I had so much fun, and it was so different from, what a traditional translation project is about. And fast forward to me going back to Argentina, I got a job at a translation company because of my knowledge of Portuguese and English, and because of my experiences abroad. And that actually led me to, initially I was working with different industries, so not only the learning and development industry, itself and exclusively, but I noticed that was my favorite industry to work with. And I actually, and to this day, I remember one of my favorite clients back then. They had a safety training program. They had like their own certificate that you could get trained to. They had specific instructors, and they had teachers and instructors all over the world. So we were helping them translate that into so many different languages. And now looking back and thinking of all the knowledge that I have now, I'm like, wow, we were doing PDF and, Illustrator, which, or InDesign, which, okay, it's fine, but like PowerPoints and slides. And I'm like, oh, if I had known back then, I could have at least, because I feel like that's part of my job now. I'm part consultant as well, in a way, because I'm like, okay, this is great. And I know that you want to, have this ready in different languages, and that's fine.
Right.
We can do this, but also, have you heard of Storyline?
Right.
Have you heard of these
there is a more efficient way to do this.
Right. A lot more engaging, a lot more fun to work with and to go through. And I feel like, and back then this client was from Brazil, so even though it was an American company, the training program was managed mostly from Brazil. So I feel like there's also this lack of knowledge of what the industry has to offer, right? Of all the different tools, all the different platforms that we can use today to create content that's engaging, and that's, that actually gets the message across, that it's not just a slide that you completed to have a check.
Right, exactly.
In the HR system, if the company has one, because I've also,
oh my gosh.
I've also been part of companies that didn't even have an HR department.
Oh
and
my
I'm
gosh.
like, oh, we want to.
That's a little scary.
Yeah, I know. So
That's
yeah,
amazing.
I do believe that, especially for us in Latin America, and I feel like this is kind of like my motivation these days, and especially with GLDC, is to try to build bridges to that community and try to bring the the knowledge and all the resources that the L&D community has here in the US, and also in Europe, but especially in the US, and bring it somehow to Latin America as well. So
that's an amazing feat. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, I knew in general, some, I guess, lacking or, some gaps, a little bit of a delay, if you will, but I didn't realize it was to that extent when it came down to South America. So I think that's an amazing interest and goal and willingness to look into that and to help. I really love and you know this more just because of your experiences, right? You've been to other places, you've lived in other places. Mm-hmm. And so having that global mindset is so important. And that's one of the things I've harped on this so many times with GLDC. I love the fact that we're connecting with other folks in L&D, but they're all over the world. And so it's so fascinating to listen what they're doing, what's happening, how it works for them or what doesn't work for them, and then being able to help each other rather than just, this is here in the US and this is it and that's the one and only thing. And I don't think that's fair. And especially with the way things have been going since COVID, I think that's really critical, to not leave fellow professionals behind or those that are interested to change into this profession. And I have noticed that, especially like on LinkedIn, how many people within L&D are that open arms, if you will, to bring people in and show them the ropes, which, I mean, of course, is kind of what I'm hoping to do with this channel. But I think that's incredible that you see that and you're like, okay, we can do something better with this. Yeah. So why not bridge? You mentioned Mariana, and I love that it kind of like sparked on you as you were sharing your story. The process, I mean, obviously it's different when you look back on something, but that realization of, oh, this is, I like this aspect of it. I think you mentioned it, you were in Brazil doing, the English, translation of a curriculum. Mm-hmm. And yeah, the translation's great. And obviously you have the ability for that, but seeing how it can build out a course and the learning behind it and how that really took your attention, I thought that was really cool to hear you say that. Was that really like the time or the situation that really stood out to you, that you were like, wow, I love this even more than the translation of what I do? Like the learning?
I think that was part of it. And when you I sometimes think about things that hit you in the head that you don't notice them until they hit you like 3, 5
4
times. And you're like, oh, look at that.
Right.
I kind of have that feeling with my path to L&D.
Yes.
Like I believe that was part of it, that was building that. Yeah. But I think I always had this drive to help people, and especially to provide access. I feel like to me, what gets me, what gets me out of bed each morning, what gets me excited about my job is to actually think about the people that we're helping with and of course it's not me. I'm right. I'm not translating anymore. We have a team at Terra that does all the project management and all the translation, and like they're the ones, I get the credit for it, but they're the ones actually doing the job.
Right.
And but still, like, I think about, because of us, there's people in in Latin America, in Brazil, and even in Europe that maybe don't have access to specific programs. Like, we work with different American universities, and just the fact that someone from Brazil that probably doesn't have a lot of resources can take a program with a prestigious American university and get a certification, get a degree in their own native language without having to move to the US and spend thousands of dollars for years and get student loans, and they can do it from home, from their country of origin, in their native language. That to me is priceless. Like, I would do that for free.
I love that you say that. Yeah, I know, right? If everything else was taken care of. But you hit it with that accessibility. I love that. Yeah.
And of course, I love the higher ed projects that we have, and the partners we have for those projects. That they're amazing, and it's super fun to work with them. Yeah. But even the corporate training ones, just thinking of a company from the US that wants to have offices in other countries, and they're they, they're not asking their employees to necessarily speak English or be fluent at English. That they're actually making the effort of making their content and their training available for them in their own language. That to me is also huge, because that's opportunity. That's job openings for people that otherwise wouldn't be able to work at that company because they don't speak the language.
Exactly. No, that is massive. I fully agree with you. That's really cool. And it goes back to what I was harping before about, it's that step closer to understanding of the global mindset, that accessibility, inclusivity, I mean, that just nails it right there. And that's what's nice about, I guess, what is happening. I'm not saying that I love that COVID happened, but it did push where we were going anyway, right? L&D was going in that direction anyway. It just sped it up, right? And so I think that's awesome. I love that. So I'm curious here, you had these experiences, you had these getting hit on the head multiple times. I totally understand that. It's always looking back and you're like, I was kind of told what to do a while earlier and I just wasn't paying attention to it. So if my audience, for those of you that are kind of thinking the same thing, look back, you might be, being pushed to L&D naturally multiple times over, not realize it. Don't ignore them. But what was your first step? I call this program stepping stones, but what was the first thing you did once you realized, okay, there's this L&D world out there. I naturally gravitate toward it. I seem to have a talent for it. I would like to grow more skill in it, or, develop a career in it. Once you had that understanding and realization, what did you do? Or I guess, we'll leave it on action. Did you read something? Did you attend a webinar? Did you connect with somebody? I mean, the sky's the limit, but I'm just curious, like, what did you do?
Yeah, I think to me it was connecting with people. And actually I can't, not mention Nicole Ralph. I met her in on the online version of DevLearn in 2020.
Oh, nice.
And she was, it was 2020. So that was 2 years ago.
I know.
It's like, it's been
feels longer than that.
And she was great. And I felt back then that I was starting to fully, immerse myself in L&D, and that's in part thanks to my current employer and how she supported me. And she said, you can specialize in whatever you want. It's because in the translation industry, you normally are required to work with different industries. Okay. And that is so hard because it's and taxing to your brain. Like, yes, I remember, having conversations in English with an e-learning company from the UK, and then in the afternoon speaking in Portuguese with a pharmaceutical company from Brazil. It's like, that's too much for any brain. That's overload, including mine. Yeah. So not that mine's special or anything, but I do feel that this opportunity that this company gave me to, and I am super grateful to them for letting me, specialize in what I like, to letting me bring my interests front and center to the table and say, this is what I want to do, and be allowed to participate in all these events and conferences. Like, that is, to me, that's huge. I mean, that's, like I said, that's how I met Nicole, and Nicole was eventually the person that introduced me to GLDC. Nice. And that was, I believe, late 2020, December 2020, that I first heard about the GLDC. And a lot of things happened after that. I like you said, I helped put together a conference for first-time speakers. like looking back, I'm like, why did we do that? How was that like?
Right. It's always the case. That's crazy.
And now I get to co-organize it
Yes.
along with Linnea and who I love, and she's great, and I wouldn't have met her if it wasn't for the GLDC. And to me, connections is key. Like that's the main thing I can say, and that's why every person that wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, and I see that they're from the L&D world, and I see that they're not connected with people from the GLDC. I'm like, have you heard of this?
Yes.
It is not a cult, I promise. Right. but I did, and I mean, that's how I connected with Anna, for instance.
Yeah.
Or I think Elio just joined recently from Brazil, or Cynthia from Peru, and I am really excited about this. Like you mentioned, this global, like the especially the global aspect of the GLDC, and how we can reach other cultures and other other regions, and actually share the knowledge, that because it is unbelievably so much knowledge that you guys have here in the US that I don't think other countries have access to that yet.
Yeah. And it's so great that you recognize that, because even for me here listening to you, Mariana, like I said, I knew a little bit, but I didn't realize to the extent. And for me, just because of what I've seen, like in the academic world, how far behind we are, and other things that, we could be doing better here in the US. I feel that we're behind. I mean, that's how I feel, especially when I started connecting with GLDC, and I'm like, oh my gosh, what they're talking about in Canada and what they're talking about in Europe and in the UK. And I'm like, I'm missing out. I'm clearly not connecting very well, or there's just, more information that I really need to, pay attention to, even within the States, because it didn't feel like that to me. But you make an interesting point that I don't sit there and consider to that extent, but it's true. I mean, if we have all these resources that I'm clearly, I would say, ignorant about, I obviously need to get more in touch with things, but regardless of that, the fact is that I'm taking it for granted because I'm not aware or knowledgeable in it. But look at those that don't even, are able to connect or reside in the US, like you're pointing out. And I mean, that's huge I'm not trying to feel guilty, but I feel guilty. I mean, it's just terrible. It's just like, okay, we have this, and this is in other areas of life. I'm not just going to say this is L&D, because that's not true. But if we have these gifts, we need to be sharing them. We need to, as you said, be accessible, make them accessible, and be inclusive. Education and knowledge as a whole is just so powerful. And when people don't have that, I mean, it really forces their hand. It really diminishes what they can do. And that's really not fair. And especially in this day and age, I mean, so much going on, and it's like, well, we have technology. Why are we not doing more? So I can't agree more. You said it so beautifully. Wow.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And for the record, this might be just utter ignorance.
Yeah.
But I remember when I first started in the L&D world, I tried to find, communities, groups, associations back home in Argentina. And I remember I only found one, and it had an old website from like the early 2000s. And I was like, I don't think these people are active anymore. Like, is there any like course I can do, like any training I can? And I couldn't find anything. This might be, lack of resources to find those contacts in Argentina, or awareness of their existence. But I and it might have changed since, through COVID. But I agree, especially with what you said of COVID, and a positive, if we may say that there was a positive thing of COVID, to me was this bringing people together in a different way, and without having, location be a barrier, because we were all stranded at home.
Yes.
Being able to connect with people from Jamaica and from Argentina and from Brazil and from Peru and from Sweden and Russia and Ukraine and Australia. Like, it's
you have from everywhere. It's really incredible. So I commend you on the fact that you take that experience to the heart and you apply it with your L&D. Your first stepping stones, I thank you for sharing that. Connections are so important. And so I hope for those of you who are listening that if you're shy or hesitant, please don't be. You're more than welcome to reach out to myself, to any of us in L&D. We're always more than welcome to help where we can. And this is why. It's because we understand from experience the connections can lead us to so many opportunities. And we don't always recognize, we don't always realize it until we look back and go, okay, this is why I'm in L&D. I recognize this, and then I connected to these folks and I learned this from them, and so on and so forth. And so in the way of LinkedIn, I guess you could say you're only a click away from
absolutely.
connecting with somebody.
You can connect to me if you're listening, and I'll invite you to the GLDC, and you'll meet wonderful people like Christina. and half of the people I mentioned during this recording are from GLDC. And I probably wouldn't have met them if it wasn't for the GLDC.
So those are great stepping stones. I guess what other stepping stones since then have you taken as you started recognizing and building up your career? So you made connections, and then it sounded like you were trying to find courses that didn't exist at that time, but like, what else did you do to, I guess, sharpen those natural talents and make a way for yourself?
Yeah, actually, that's a hard question, because I have a tendency to deep dive on things. Like, if I find something is interesting, I'm like, oh, I could do this, and I just go down the rabbit hole, and I lose myself on whatever minor. Like, I love neuroscience, and I go like, I could be a neuroscientist. Like,
right.
I think let's manage those expectations, and let's refocus. Like, why would we do that?
Right.
Let's refocus. So especially in my job, and that's why I like the fact that I can connect all of my interests. And I'm still working with translation, even though I feel like I'm more active in the L&D community than the translation community. Sometimes I feel a bit guilty about that, but it's I mean, look at you guys are great.
We'll take care of you.
But yeah, I feel like I do, again, I try to manage and myself, and not fully like hyper focus on different things. Now I am, for instance, really passionate about the use and application of virtual reality for learning. And especially for training programs. I think it's the benefits of being immersed in virtual reality. And being able to practice without actually, if you're a surgeon, for instance, you're not practicing on a human body, you're practicing on a graphic
image, essentially. VR.
And also for other types of learning as well, but I think specifically for training, it's great. So, but I'm still trying to manage myself and not go fully, I'm gonna be a VR developer, because I don't know how to code, and
right
and that would really stray me from my path, I think so. But I do I do try to look for there's a lot of content on LinkedIn that's free, or you can get a trial. There's and I try to find basic like introductory courses.
Okay.
And then if I see that that's something that I am interested in and that that I might benefit from, I do follow that path, but I try to not let myself get carried away and just go like,
Okay.
I'm gonna be an expert on storyline, because honestly, I don't need to for what I'm doing right now.
Right, right.
I am not the one actually working on the file. So
Right.
I just need to know it exists and how
Enough.
it works more or
Right.
less, and how to navigate it, but I don't
Yeah.
need to be an expert. And
Right.
that
Right.
is a struggle for me, because I always want to be the expert on
Yeah.
everything, and that's not possible.
Well, that's good that you recognize that. It's good that you're
Yeah.
finding a balance in that. And I thank you, because I was actually about to ask that. Like, so, what specifically do you do? So, using LinkedIn to kind of help you navigate and looking for those free opportunities to learn. Mm-hmm. Any, I guess, it's really hard because I want to ask you, like, are there books or things that you go to for your deep dives? But then you're saying, you're trying to recognize, okay, I can go in, ankle deep because I don't need to be an expert in it. So do you just search online? Do you go to specific, I mean, you said LinkedIn, but are there certain journals that you go to? Or do you just, do a basic Google search and you just kind of click around till you come across things, through different credible sources that you're like, oh, okay, I can learn more about neuroscience here, or AR, or whatever.
Yeah, well, I follow different associations,
Oh,
and I
okay.
trust them
Much
to
more.
be,
Yes.
my reputable source of knowledge.
Yes.
And also, and going back to the connections, right?
Yeah.
I have the privilege to be able to attend all these different conferences.
Nice.
And I go, I attended a VR show last year. I
That's
attended
nice.
DevLearn, and I'm attending again this year, and I'm very excited about that because I actually hope that I'll meet a lot more GLDCers this time.
That's cool.
I met quite a few last year, but
Oh, how fun.
and that I would say is my primary source of knowledge, because I see what other people are doing and I go like, oh, okay, that's a great resource that I didn't know about. So I'll go look into that. But I think it is really hard, especially coming from a different industry, to know where to start and to know what to look for.
Right.
So I think joining associations, or at least following associations like the Learning Guild, like ATD, like the VR AR association in my case, that I'm also playing around with virtual reality. Those I think are huge to kind of guide you, or at least to show you what other people are doing. And from that you can decide what to take and what to not take, and forge your own path.
That is wonderful advice. Wow. That might seem so simple for you, but for many of us that don't even consider that, is like, I've searched in other areas, but I didn't consider, just going straight to these different associations and just seeing what they have, because that's the good and the bad that comes with the reality of the internet, right? You do have a lot of information that you can go through and you can find, but finding out the ones that are actually credible, that are bound, with studies or, science backing it up, however you want to look at it, it's a whole different thing. And that can get a little tricky. And then, not everybody has all the time in the world just to sit through, sift through what's real and what's not, and what works and what doesn't. So nice having an association that does that already, right? Just like ATD, they already have, okay, we've done these different studies and here's, the information, the data that you can look at. And that's much more helpful than trying to hope and find the right one on your own.
I mean, that I see that as, that's kind of their job, and they're curating all these content, and like, I'm gonna trust them because they do this full time. Like, I'm not not gonna be as good at finding, like you said, like sifting through the scammers and because I've heard about a lot of scams out there in the L&D world, especially for
courses.
For beginners, for people that want to get their foot in the industry and don't really know where to start. And of course, I do not want to promote that. Go with the experts, or find someone that actually has a career in L&D and is more or less where you want to go, and just talk to them and ask them.
That's beautiful. Couldn't said it better myself. Yes, Mariana, you got it. Well, awesome. Mariana, before we wrap up, where should we be interested to connect with you or follow you, see what you're up to, learn from you? Where can we maybe find you in the social media world? Do you have Twitter handle, or obviously we have LinkedIn, but
yeah, I do. I need to get better at Twitter. I have a Twitter handle. I don't really use it. I think LinkedIn is the best place to find me at, and also the MyGLDC platform, mygldc.com. You're gonna find me there. I have a thing that says I'm a host for some reason, so so you can also connect with me through there.
Beautiful. Perfect. Well, Mariana, I can't thank you enough for imparting wisdom to us and your experience, and of course your time and energy, from your busy day of your L&D life. But I'm so gracious for you. Thank you so much for being able to be with us today. To my listeners and viewers, until next time, continue stepping onward. Thank you all so much.